Let me tell you about a photo. You have seen it 1,000 times. A perfectly still black lake reflecting an eruption of green and purple light across the entire sky. A small silhouette standing at the edge, just one person looking up at something so enormous and so beautiful, it makes the whole universe feel personal. That photo made Iceland, not the volcanoes, not the waterfalls, not the geysers that have been erupting on schedule for centuries. That one image of a single person standing under the northern lights replicated across Instagram millions of times is the reason Iceland went from fewer than 500,000 visitors in 2010 to over 2 million in 2025. And here is the thing that image never told you. That person stood in the freezing dark for 4 hours to get it. They drove 2 hours outside Reykjavik in a rental car that cost them $300 a day. They checked 3 different Aurora forecast apps, each giving a different prediction. And when the lights finally came, they lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes. Iceland is real. The lights are real. The waterfalls are real. But the version of Iceland that has been sold to the world, the version that fills flights every single week with people carrying enormous expectations and moderate budgets, that version has a gap in it. And that gap is what this video is actually about. Here is what nobody tells you before you book Iceland. It is one of the most expensive countries on earth. Not expensive like London or Paris, expensive like a different category entirely. A basic meal for 2 at a mid-range restaurant in Reykjavik, not fine dining. Just a normal sit-down meal will cost you between $80 and $120 before tip, before drinks. A rental car, which you absolutely need because public transport outside the capital is almost non-existent, starts at around $200 a day for a basic model. If you want a 4-wheel drive, which you will need for the Highland roads, add another $100 on top. The Blue Lagoon, the famous geothermal spa that appears in essentially every Iceland travel video ever made. Admission alone, not including any treatments, not including food or drinks, just entry, starts at €60. And you have to book it weeks in advance. Show up without a reservation and you are turned away. Petrol, accommodation, tools. Every single thing in Iceland is priced at a level that, once you are there and running the actual numbers, produces a specific kind of quiet panic that no travel blog quite prepares you for. The average tourist spends over $300 per person per day in Iceland, not per trip, per day. Most people who book Iceland do not know that number before they arrive. The ones who do often cannot believe it until they see the receipts. Let us talk about the Blue Lagoon. Because this is the single image most associated with Iceland tourism. And it is also the single experience that produces the most complicated feelings in people who actually go. The water is real. The milky blue color is real. It comes from silica minerals in the geothermal water. The steam rising off the surface in cold air is genuinely, almost thoroughly beautiful. But here is what the photos never show. At peak season, which is most of the year now, the Blue Lagoon has hundreds of people in it at any given moment. The silence and the solitude of the images you have been looking at do not exist during opening hours. What exists is a very expensive, very crowded, very efficiently managed tourist experience that has been engineered down to the last detail to feel premium and mostly succeeds, but is fundamentally a geothermal swimming pool with a very good marketing department. Iceland's tourism board actually tried to solve this by introducing timed entry slots and mandatory advance booking, which helps with the worst of the crowding. But here is what that decision also did: it made the Blue Lagoon inaccessible to spontaneous visitors. The theme that travel content sells as a magical, unexpected encounter with nature is now a ticketed attraction you need to book 6 weeks in advance from your laptop in another country. That gap between the fantasy and the logistics is the Blue Lagoon in 2026. Still worth it? For many people, yes. But worth 3 months of saving and 2 hours of booking frustration and €60 just to stand in a crowded pool in a cloud of steam? That is a question only you can answer, and most travel content will never ask it. Now, here is the part that almost no Iceland travel video will touch. What is actually happening to the country underneath the tourism? Iceland's housing crisis in Reykjavik is directly linked to the explosion in short-term tourist rentals. Apartments that families lived in for decades have been converted to Airbnbs because the math is simple. A tourist week generates more income than a local month. The center of the capital has been progressively emptied of actual residents. And nature, the thing that people are coming specifically to see, is under pressure that Iceland's environment was never designed to handle. Tourists walking off marked paths to get better photos have caused soil erosion at some of Iceland's most fragile sites that will take decades to recover. Moss that grows a single centimeter per year destroyed in seconds by one wrong step. Geothermal areas marked as dangerous, not suggestions. Actual warnings regularly ignored because the photo opportunity exists just past the barrier. One incident that stuck with me: tourists were caught attempting to bathe in the Stokkr geyser field, a geyser that erupts every 6 to 10 minutes with boiling water, because they had seen someone do it on social media. The Icelandic government has now introduced a tourist tax reinstated after being dropped during the pandemic, a sustainability fee charged to every visitor, and the Prime Minister has publicly discussed surge pricing, charging more during peak season to discourage the concentration of visitors. In plain language, Iceland is telling you, politely but clearly, that it cannot sustain what is happening to it. The question is whether the tourists are listening. And now the aurora. Because this is why most people actually go to Iceland, and it is the thing most likely to leave you standing in a field at 2 in the morning, feeling confused about your life choices. The Northern Lights are not a scheduled event, they are a solar phenomenon. They require clear skies, low light pollution, and sufficient solar activity, 3 conditions that align less often than the Instagram grid would suggest. The Aurora forecast apps give you a probability rating 1 to 9. Tourists are told anything above 3 is worth going out for. What they are not told is that even a rating of 7 does not guarantee you will see anything visible to the naked eye. Cameras capture aurora activity that eyes cannot see. A significant percentage of those perfect aurora photos required long exposure camera settings and post-processing. The real aurora, when it comes, is extraordinary. Nothing I say will change that. But the probability that it appears on the specific 3 or 5 or 7 nights you are in Iceland in winter, which is the only season with dark enough skies, is lower than the travel content suggests. Thousands of tourists leave Iceland every year without seeing the lights at all, having spent a week's salary on flights, accommodation, and a rental car waiting in the dark. That is the Iceland nobody shows you on the brochure. So here is the honest answer to the question you came here with. Is Iceland worth it? If you go knowing exactly what it is: a remote, extraordinary, brutally expensive, logistically demanding, genuinely stunning country where the gap between expectation and reality can be enormous, yes, it is worth it. The waterfalls are real. The volcanic landscapes are real. The silence of the interior highlands, genuine, profound silence of a kind that barely exists anywhere in the modern world, that is absolutely real. But if you go carrying the version of Iceland that has been constructed from a decade of filtered images and carefully edited travel content, the version where the lights always appear and the lagoon is always empty and the roads are always clear, you are setting yourself up for something complicated. Iceland does not owe you the photo. It does not owe you the moment. It is just a place, a genuinely remarkable, genuinely harsh, genuinely beautiful place that has been marketed to you more aggressively than almost anywhere else on earth. Go. But go as a traveler, not as a content consumer waiting for the real world to match the feed. The difference between those two things is the difference between a trip that changes you and a very expensive disappointment. I'm TK. This is The Hidden Route. Subscribe, because the next place we go, the gap between expectation and reality is even harder to talk about.